with a song coming on. Clap, snap, the black crack, grip, grab.
All right, welcome to Downtown, to Podcast Town. I'm Nathan.
And I'm Tyler.
Yeah, and we're gonna go over our top 10 changes to this edition. I'm sure you've been watching a lot of videos about things that are important, the things that matter in this new edition. So rather than kind of list off all the important things, we're just gonna go over some of our favorite changes.
Yeah. There's quite a bit. Me and Nathan have actually been trying to put this podcast together for a while now. And right when we were starting to get some videos under the way, a new edition dropped. So we thought it'd be pretty fitting for our first video to be about the new edition and the changes and the things we're looking forward to.
Yeah.
So a lot of changes. I will say that not all of them are perfect, but in this video we're going to kind of be leaning into our favorite things and kind of going in with the right foot into this new edition with some positivity and optimism.
Yeah, I think that's the main thing, because like really it's a game, everyone's here to have fun. Like it's important to dwell on, what might disappoint us, but we're just going to try to talk about what we're really looking forward to, because there are some things we're really looking forward to in this edition. So.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You got the starter?
Sure.
You got the starter box? I got the starter box, so we're ready to go. We got the rules and we got the books here, so we're going to start off with Nathan here on the first one.
All right. Yeah, so my first one that I really like, the first change, and these aren't in any particular order for me, but I really like the changes to a lot of the new heroics. Primarily heroic strike, going from bumping fight value from a D6 to a D3, I feel like is such a good change. I'm a big fan of reducing any type of swingy nature, trying to bring things more into like a more reliable state of mind, and like just not knowing if random orc captain is gonna strike up to beat Sauron or like that's just so swingy. And now there's just no chance of it. It puts so much more emphasis on high fight value, like Gilgalad, Glorfindel now, like those higher fight value guys, they don't have to worry as much about little strikers. So. And
then there's a conversation around like my models should be more valuable, and this is a way that it kind of does that, right? Because now an Aragorn doesn't have to strike up for maybe a lower model. He can just
accept it. Just risk it a little bit more. Yeah, and so I feel like that's a really good change. That's probably the biggest change in terms of heroics for me that's important. And there's a few others, like heroic strength, I feel like just was never used, and now like you might use it. Going from a D3 increase in strength to doubling your strength, that's a pretty significant difference. And I feel like some people are going to be using that.
Yeah, for sure. There's a change about that, right? That it can only be during strikes, right?
Yeah.
So you can't,
Yeah, you can't use it to like try to stop a monstrous charge or something like that. It's only to wound, but which I think that's the way it should be.
I think that's what its intention was.
That's what its intention was. And I feel like it's just now, going, it could be +1, potentially +2 to wound, and it's a pretty big difference.
Yeah. You had a couple others from.
Heroic challenge obviously is different now. Like I feel like they tried to put a lot of emphasis on heroic challenge. That one's kind of like some people really like it, getting all those bonuses like +1 attack, +1 to wound. Whether or not you accept the challenge, like do you really want your enemy now having those buffs and you don't? If you accept it, now you get those cool buffs. It makes that kind of a cool choice that you have to make, and there seems to be an interesting amount of models now that like are playing around with heroic challenge, like they can challenge any tier, or some like have to accept the challenges. I don't know, I feel like challenge, we might be seeing that a bit more
compared to really not seeing it at all.
So ever.
Any improvement there is good improvement.
And then heroic resolve, actually that was a big one, because no one called it. Yeah, it was never used.
Right.
Which you can see a theme to my heroics here. Like these ones that are never used, like now you might use them, because resolve, you couldn't move. You were essentially like transfixed yourself by calling it, which 90% of the time that's the spell that was going to hit you anyways. yeah, now you can move after you call it, and like that just makes the biggest difference in the world.
Yeah, and I think that one caveat in there is that it's an automatic standfast goes off, right?
Mhm.
So even if you lose the move off and get tagged,
Yeah, you can still call a resolve, which is huge because now even if you lose priority, if your opponent tags you, you still have that option to get that standfast off. Because there are tons of strategies that resolve around not charging the enemy models, but charging their leaders to stop the standfast.
Yeah. Definitely some cool ones there, and there's some other ones. Check out all of those because some of them have a little bit of tinkering. So
Yeah.
good first one.
Yeah.
Definitely. I'm going to jump over to my first one. Will be this will be our second one. Is fight value in general, right? So there was a pretty big fight value redistribution for this edition because it seemed like a lot of models were all stuck around the same fight value. It seemed like there was a race for all the warriors to get to fight value 5. If you weren't really getting there, then you're just like better off just spamming out with fight value 2 or 3 and right, and it made fight value 4 like this weird tweener thing. But also on the hero side, right? So we've seen the heroes kind of get a little more diverse. And for the ones that did get buffed, they can they're showing their value in that way. And then, the ones that didn't, they're kind of showing, maybe they're not the strongest play anymore, or maybe they have to find their value in another way that's not just a fight, right?
Yeah, like I feel like the fight distribution, the warriors were almost all fight 3, fight 4, sometimes 5, like the buff to get to 5. And now that's spread out a bit more. You've got some fight 2s. You've got like Gondor at fight 3 with compared to Rohan at fight 3. Like are they really like the same like tier? Now it's different. It just kind of helps separate that. But the heroes, I feel like, is where it matters most, especially with the change to strike. Like now having that higher fight value means so much more because it's just that much harder for someone to strike up against you. And the difference in fight values with heroes is I think it's gonna be a significant thing to look out for with this edition.
Yeah, and some of them, depending on what their fight value got moved to, like a Gilgalad, for example, is at fight value 9, doesn't have strike, but there's just not going to be many models that are going to be able to get above 9 these days, right? And then to get to 9, Gilgalad's got the Elven Maid, so there's still advantage there. So kind of interesting how that's going to play out, but I think we're going to see some more variety in armies and stuff like that due to these changes in the fight value.
Yeah, I think so too. All right, so my next one that I really enjoy, or I'm hoping to enjoy, is the dominant keyword. I feel like that is going to be such a game changer for this edition. It's going to, for those of you that don't know, dominant X, they count as that value next to an objective. So dominant 2 means they count as 2 models next to an objective when you're counting models to see who has control over something. Your general just straight up gets dominant 3 now, unless they have something higher already, which is awesome because now like you feel like your big fighty leader, putting them forward like into battle, like there's a real good reason to do it now, other than just it's cool, because like normally you have to be really conservative with your leader because you give up leader points and for getting them hurt or wounded, but now they can be worth a lot more next to an objective. Units that have the dominant trait, just regular warriors, monsters got the dominant trait, giving monsters more value. I think it's going to make for some interesting games where trying to get those dominant pieces off the objectives, I think it's going to be really cool.
Yeah, and there's a couple of models and special rules where the dominant keyword is circumstantial, right?
Yeah.
So situational. I think it's like Fountain Court Guard, maybe, or even one of those for Minas Tirith, where there's some level of they gain dominant
around Denethor, I think, right?
Yeah, or something like that. So there was a call in the previous edition, and from the community about wanting to have some level of balancing for some of these lower model count armies, where if you just had 2 goblins, you know, and I had, you know, an eagle.
You had a Balrog.
Yeah, right.
I'm outnumbering you.
I'm outnumbering you, so I got this objective.
Yeah,
So that kind of felt weird.
Changing that to where now that Balrog, like, yeah, he's going to be outnumbering pretty much wherever he goes. It's a big deal because now it's not such a handicap to play a model like that during those objective games. They have much more of a fighting chance.
Yeah, and something you have to account for on the receiving end of that. So, yeah, good change. I'm going to go into something Nathan kind of already hinted at, which was monsters, right? So on top of getting the dominant keyword, they're just, they've allowed them to kind of shine a little more in this edition with some more potency. In combats, we're going to be able to see them, since they're monsters and they're big, they can, you know, if they can kill the front line, then they can strike at the spear supports as well. And that's just an outright monster thing. Pretty cool. But then I also like the change to hurl. Yeah. And you know, the previous edition, it was really about lining up that hurl, and you had to be in the right spot, and it was a little fidgety with, you know, it had to be through the center of both, and that kind of left it up to some weird game moments where, you know, it was kind of like I'm really fighting for this angle, and you're kind of like, I really don't agree with that. Now we're going to be doing some intelligence testing. We're going to be doing still the same thing with the strength difference in the D3, but then it's, you know, if I win that intelligence check, I'm picking that target. If I lose it, you're picking the target.
Yeah, and I feel like it's good in a different way. Like hurling through a battle line, knocking everything prone, like that's really good. But now you don't get to do that anymore. So initially people were like, oh, that sucks, hurl sucks. And when you stop to think about, like, no, now you get to pick a target. Like any hero that's mounted near a monster, it doesn't matter. You don't have to line up anything anymore. You can just say, I'm hurling at that guy. And like, now he's prone. As long as you pass your test, your intelligence test.
And for those intelligent monsters.
It just makes, at least for me as an opponent going against someone with a monster, I don't know, like, it's something you have to think about. Like, do you want to risk just getting dehorsed because they can hurl? Like, and then there's nothing you can do about it if they pass their test.
So more thought, more threat. I mean, that's a threat. If you're having to think about what they can do, we consider that a threat. And they're adding that more. Whereas, you know, if you just send one guy into my troll and it lines up with no one, I mean, that's convenient for you. And really, you know, doesn't do much for my troll. But now he can still hurl you whichever direction he wants if he can pass that test. Barge also had a little bit of an improvement, in my opinion. Like Nathan mentioned earlier, anything that's super swingy, the Barge got moved to D3 plus 3. So it's a guaranteed 3. So you can always recharge at least the models you barged, which was such a weird dynamic before. If you rolled like you moved everybody back 3 inches and you rolled a 2, that's not a feel good moment, and it doesn't feel right either. So I think that's good. But then the last piece was kind of going back to my other point, with fight value being adjusted, and some of these monsters did get their fight values increased, and then strike being lowered, right? They just sit there at that fight value, and it's a much bigger threat in the game. You know, not every hero can just jump above you and swarm you and kill you.
No more of those cheap strikers that fight 5. Like you charge one of those into the trolls now, like you are far from guaranteed to win that.
And then you're putting guys at risk, even putting spear supports in, and there's just more for it. So I'm looking forward to seeing some more monsters on the board, and maybe some of the ones we didn't always see, but are very much Lord of the Rings. Right? Very much. Some of the most iconic scenes in Lord of the Rings are, you know, the Troll of Moria, right? The Mordor trolls bursting through the gates. Those are pretty iconic ones.
I'm excited to see those, because it kind of sucked that they just weren't very good this last edition. Okay, so my next one, I'm going to stay a little bit on the monster theme, and I'm going to go with War Beasts. So in this previous edition, War Beasts, specifically like the Moomak, because that's the one that did not get Legacy, the 2 War Beast profiles. They were fun. They were like, anytime someone bought a Moomak, everyone was excited because it looked cool, but it was never a very competitive choice. And I'm still not convinced that it's going to be meta defining or super competitive, but they're more usable now, in my opinion, because they're like main counters, the main easy way to stop them. They've kind of this edition kind of gets rid of that. Like previously, if enemy model charged your war beast, that was it. Now you don't get to get your cool trample off. Like it just, bummer, too bad, you lost priority. Yeah. Now they have to charge you with enough models where the strength, is it exceeds or meets? I can't remember.
One of those two.
Yeah, the strength of the war beast, which is the Momac I think is 9.
Yeah.
So you're probably gonna have to get in at least 3 models to tie that thing up. Combine that with it having terror. You're not guaranteed to get 3 models in and stop the stampeding war beast anymore, which is really cool because now people who bring this really iconic monster, this big giant elephant, and like want to stampede stuff, they don't have to get stuck the entire game not being able to do what they want to do.
And then they do an investment, right? It's like that's your whole army almost.
Right, and it just felt so bad to never win priority or to lose every move off and just dink, like one little guy stops them. That's not an option anymore. So the opponent has to commit a decent amount to try to stop your war beast from stampeding through or trampling through them, which I think is a big deal. The other big part is the magic. Like it's harder to stop a war beast with magic now. The war beast itself can't be targeted. The commander on top still can, but even if he gets transfixed, your war beast can still move in a straight line, like if you want to. So if you have already lined it up, a magic spell is not going to stop you from doing what you have already set up. Which again, I think just plays into like you brought this really cool model, this big, giant, scary monster, and it's not getting stopped from doing what you want it to do.
Compel doesn't work on it either anymore, right?
Right.
So
Yeah.
you
can't force it to move.
Yeah. That was always kind of oppressive a little bit.
Yeah, well, because you get compelled over your own guys. You stampede over your own army. So it just kind of gets rid of that, like, this feels bad type of situation with the Mumac, which I think it just improves the gameplay.
They don't have high fight, right?
They do.
Like 4.
They're like 5.
Yeah.
And the warlord or whatever on top doesn't have high fight. The other cool thing is models killed by the war beast in combat now count towards that guy on top's his kill count, which mattered for like Lords of Battle or something where you have to keep track of your leader kills. Now that guy can rack up kills. I don't think it's through the stampeding. I have to double check. I probably should have checked before recording this. But I know in combat those actually count now towards kills.
And is that like in a Contest of Champions type game where you're racking them up?
Yeah, that's what I meant, contest. Yeah.
Lords are good. You just keep
stampeding.
Yeah.
So overall, I don't think the Mumac is going to be like some crazy piece that is going to be winning a bunch of tournaments, but it's at least going to be fun. You're going to be able to do what you want with it. And they're definitely more competitive than they were before.
Yeah. So with that being said, if there's a chance we're going to be seeing these more and you've never played against one, it might be worth you kind of just, if you have one around or a buddy in your community, just test game it every once in a while, even just on a perfectly flat table with no terrain, and just kind of get a feel for what it's like to face the thing, what it can do, what you would need to do to counter it. Because if you're going to see these more, part of it, avoiding those kind of feel bad moments is kind of knowing what your opponent can do sometimes, right?
Right.
Yeah. So I'm gonna get into mine next and check something. Okay, we're good. Just want to make sure it's still recording. You can edit that out, right?
Yeah, totally.
All right. Cool. So after War Beasts, right, which right now is kind of, unless we're gonna see more, is just the Mumac.
Yeah.
Right. So I think we're gonna see the Great Beast of Gorgoroth back in Legacy. So maybe we'll still get to see that played with these new rules. But yeah, unless they unleash some other war beast upon us.
Who knows?
We'll see.
There's new movies in the works. So.
Yeah. This next one for me will be a short one, but a goodie, and that's actually something that I was hoping for, and I actually tried to implement in a little small event we had this year. But it's about objectives, and we had seen a destroy the supply game where you need to go and camp and destroy someone else's objective. But maybe they decided to defend it by sticking a cab base on there that's 40 inches or 40 millimeters, right? You can't get to it. Or just even that awkward situation where it's a 25 millimeter base on top of another 25 millimeter base. what's that interaction like?
Mm-hmm.
So something like that was kind of very gamey in my opinion,
Mm-hmm.
but it was allowed in the rules.
Yeah.
And so they took that out. So in this edition, we're going to have a new challenge of learning how to defend with that area being a no-fly zone. You can't land there. You can't back up onto it. So you might see some more guys who are defending it getting trapped.
Mm-hmm.
You might also have a harder time engaging some of those defenders.
Right. Yeah. So the rule is you can move through these objectives like for destroy supplies, but you can't end there. Right.
Correct. Yeah.
That's the new rule. So I think it's going to make defending objectives just harder in general.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's going to be a lot of kind of interesting strategic moments because if an objective gets charged by two different models, no longer can one hero take out those two guys. He can't end on that objective anymore in this movement. So it's going to take more than a couple to really sufficiently defend objectives now, and you can't stand on it either. So I think getting rid of the cheese is really good. I mean that's definitely a good change. I think it might catch some people unawares.
Yeah, it's going to create a whole new set of challenges, and kind of adjustment and learning how to play that.
Yeah.
Maybe you'll need to put a couple more guys instead of just one camping on it, right? Which seems about right.
Yeah, definitely. Just like in our little the little event that Tyler talked about, he implemented that rule, and I had been trying to defend my objective with a cave troll, and I was like, oh, I got a cave troll. It's that's great for defending objectives.
Yeah.
But now, like, that's really not. Like, all it took was for him to put two models on it, and for me to realize, oh crap, like I have to barge him off and get to the it was tricky. It made things a lot harder than I thought to defend the objective.
So it's funny. You eliminate something that was cheesy or gamey, and it opens up a whole other can of something for us to learn and try to master.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so my next one is kind of controversial, and like I definitely took advantage of this one, but it's the beast keyword. I feel like makes it so things like bats, Cribane, I think wargs are beasts, right? Are they beasts?
I think so, yeah.
They can no longer grab objectives. And that was always really tricky to have to deal with a bat sitting on top of a building, and you're just 12 inches away from the objective.
Yeah.
And you're like, that thing can just fly down and grab it like
Anytime.
And now that's no longer the case. I think I can see the pros and cons in this. Overall, I come on the pro side because just like logically it makes sense that a swarm of bats to me is not able to pick up some objective and fly away with it.
Yeah.
Some people disagree, but I don't know. I think it's a good change. For me, as someone who likes to play with bat swarms and Cribane, you just gotta find another use for them that isn't objective based. Which I think that's not a bad thing. So we'll see, but overall I think it's a good change.
Yeah, and if you're forcing your infantry more to pick it up, or even just some of your cavalry models, then it could put a little bit more of an emphasis on march instead of just being such a singular beginning of the game, get to you quicker type heroic.
Yeah.
Because that might be something where it's more of a saving it for mid game or late game to go grab.
Right.
So we'll see if that ends up changing anything up.
Yeah.
Okay, so for me, the next one is going to be Wargear Options, and I think this covers heroes and troops, but I want to start with the troops, and the troops kind of was a common theme in the game where you would say, hey, look, like all my bow elves, have spears, but they don't, and the game didn't make them that way.
Yeah.
But it's fine if you're saying it's across the board. It's easy to understand, but what it's now doing is it's limiting you to just one of those.
Yeah.
So if you're going to be a bow archer, or if you're going to be an archer with a bow, then that's what you're going to do, and you're not going to be able to give that support to your front line. If you're going to be, an elf with a spear, that's awesome. You'll be in there and you'll be in the fights, but then you're going to lose out on that shooting.
Right.
So we'll see how that impacts list building and how you structure your list. Because if you really want to lean into shooting, now you're kind of giving up more on the fights with no spears to support. And if you want to be more in the combat, then you're not going to get to do,
Yeah.
spears as much.
Yeah, and I feel like on the hobby side, it's just a good choice too. I mean, I know a lot of really good hobbyists that worked really hard to get their models WYSIWYG and to model them really cool with a bow and a spear. And I feel bad for people who work so hard to have such a cool model that now can't have those Wargear options. But in general, like people who like to play the game that aren't hobbyists, that don't want to take the time to make things WYSIWYG, now they don't have to do that. They could, because they were put in a tough spot where taking a bow and a spear was just the thing to do. Like if you wanted to be like optimized.
Yeah.
So you were either, if you wanted to play WYSIWYG, you were either at a disadvantage, or if you wanted to be WYSIWYG, then you had to put in a bunch of extra effort to make it so. And now people who just aren't into that, they don't have to do that. So.
Yeah, one area that I used it a ton was always putting a spear on my banner, right? Which is weird because that kind of sometimes is WYSIWYG, because some of these banners absolutely look like they have a spear.
That's
right?
what the pointy thing is.
The pointy
at the top
thing.
of
But
the
I guess
stick.
at the same time, you're not stabbing somebody with that huge flag. So I think it's fine, but I think it's going to be an actual gaming adjustment, and that's kind of what I'm leaning more into is how it's going to impact the game. And that is now, that banner's not going to be right there in the spear line going 3 inches wide each way. It's going to be back. That might impact one less fight on each side. And then you don't want to trap your own guys, so you want to be, a certain distance back. It'll be interesting how people play that out.
Right.
So on the hero side of things, we just saw, more of an increase on the horses.
Yeah.
And so those are not always going to be an auto take, I think.
I don't think so.
We'll see.
Yeah.
We'll see.
Especially with all the methods to dehorse people now. I don't think horses are going to be as important with their increased cost, with the sharpshooter. There's just so many things.
The hurdle.
Yeah.
So
It's too easy to get a hero off a horse.
And it's 20 points. 20.
Yeah.
Some of them are like 25. Some, So we'll see how that goes.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
All right. So my last one is the change to initiative. In this previous edition, winning initiative meant you went first, and that was that. Now, if you win the die, you get to choose who has priority in initiative. And I feel like that adds another layer of complexity to the game in a very good way. Most of the time, you're probably going to take priority, like you're going to want it. But there are plenty of times before lines clash, towards the end of the game, where if you're waiting to see where the opponent goes and then counter move to get onto objectives, there's going to be times where not wanting priority is gonna be a thing. And I don't know. I feel like that's gonna add so much good to the game. Having to make another tricky choice like that.
I think a couple other applications, and you had more when you explained it to me when it first came out. I thought it was going to be like, I'm pretty much always taking it. This isn't a big change. But if you're a shooting army and you're going to get to give it away, now you get to see where they all land and you can react and you can, so that can be good. And then also, I think one of the biggest ones is Maelstrom. How tough was it when you roll, you'd win the Maelstrom priority.
Yeah.
And then here you go, you walk on the board and you're getting ran over right after that, or just getting swarmed. So that could be a cool
thing. Cavalry don't want. I mean, it's counterintuitive. Most of the time, you want that charge off, but there's a lot of times where you just want to make your opponent choose. Like, are you getting close to me?
Yeah.
And then I'm charging you. Or like I said before, counterplay on objectives. Bat swarms, like having fight value is huge, especially going second, because then your opponent can't respond to that.
Yeah.
Peel off the bat swarm.
That's a good one.
There's a lot of times where you would not want priority. I think, like I said, I think that most of the time you're gonna want it, but there's those few times where you don't want it. Now at least you have the option.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then the actual extra layer of complexity is, you'll notice a couple of models will have a special rule around giving away priority. And if they give it away, then there's a buff that that they receive for
Yeah.
that. In the starter box, I think General Targ is one of those, and I know there's something where Faramir can do something too.
Yeah.
So just look out for those, be aware of it, and that it's, there's some value to that swap.
Yeah, definitely.
I think the last one for me is a great one to end on. Is that we're getting 6 new scenarios.
Oh yeah.
New edition, new scenarios. So I always tell people like there's just a lot of variables in this game between what army you're playing, what army your opponent's playing, and the scenario, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then obviously it even comes down to what board you're playing on sometimes. But there's a lot of those, right?
Yeah.
And if you don't play every scenario, you'll never really know how that army is, across the board. But now we're going to get 6 new ones.
Yep.
And that's going to give us an opportunity to play our models, our armies, but in a whole different way.
Yeah.
And try a whole different strategy out and learn a whole different, 6 different types of games.
Yeah, I'm really excited. I wonder if those scenarios will be revolving around the intelligence stat a little bit more, like picking up objectives with that. I mean, I know some people have been wanting more like big hero rewarding scenarios, because as of right now it seems to favor numbers just in general, and maybe some of those 6 will lean more into the big expensive killy hero gets rewarded. Yeah, we'll see.
Yeah, and just to caveat there is the 6 are guaranteed to be new, because we only have 18 as it stands in our game in the previous edition. We know they retained 6 of them, so those are already in the rule book.
Yep.
Same 6. So there's a chance we get 12 of the same, and then there's a guarantee we get 6 new.
Yeah.
Now, they could actually completely omit some of the existing 12
They
that
could.
we have.
They could.
If they deem them not that great heirlooms, then we would get maybe even more. Like
Yeah.
7. So, new ways to play the game, new strategies involved with that. Going to be some level of new rules in those scenarios. I think that just adds spice for the new edition. Will be fun.
Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah. Yep. So new edition. We playing new armies. What army are you gonna probably start off with?
I'm excited to play Army of the White Hand.
Army of the White Hand.
I think-
that's good.
I think having birds throwing fireballs at people is fun.
Yeah.
Lightning striking. I don't know. It just seems like a really fun army. Trying out the new dominant rule with those wildmen and flaming brands.
Yeah.
I think it looks fun.
I never played Boromir in the last one really, so I might see him out there a little bit, and that brotherly connection with him and Faramir. I think that's the reclaiming of Osgiliath one.
Yeah.
That could be kind of fun. We'll see how that goes. Faramir's been, I think, improved quite a
I
bit.
think so.
So we'll see how that goes, and see if some of these new things we're looking forward to impact our games.
Yeah, and you may or may not see those armies on an upcoming battle report. So.
Who knows? All right. Thanks for joining us today, guys. If you like what you're hearing and you want more of it, like and subscribe.
All right. We'll see you next time.